Next, we're going to look at the issue of sign crossing. This is essentially the violation of Commission Rule E13 and Commission Position number 3. Sign crossing is a big deal, and unfortunately, with our really hot market right now, it's becoming more and more prevalent. So we do need to take some time and talk about it. So let's start our entire sign crossing discussion here with a practical situation. And this, unfortunately, was a real situation that took place. A commercial property was listed for sale, and another broker contacted the seller to solicit the listing, claiming to have a potential buyer. The seller notified the listing broker, and the listing broker, doing their job, delivered brochures to the soliciting broker. And after receiving the brochures, the soliciting broker contacted the seller again to express disappointment in not getting the listing. And then, if that wasn't enough, the soliciting broker then disparaged the listing broker and then offered to list the property for a lesser commission, and then went on to inform the seller that the property was listed $750,000 under the value. Well, the listing broker contacted the soliciting broker a final time, requesting that all correspondence go through him if the soliciting broker had a buyer, and unfortunately in this case, that request was ignored. Now, before we go on at all talking about the sign crossing element, let me just add an editorial comment here. Brokers really should never offer value opinions in relationship to transactions that they are not a party to. It doesn't even have to be a sign crossing relation issue. Okay, but just don't offer value opinions in relation to transactions you don't have a dog in the hunt on. Okay, without knowing the full details of the listing, a value opinion is based on really poor evidence and can mislead consumers as to the true value of their property. Don't do it. Okay, let's get back to the issue of the sign crossing. Let's just look and see if any rules were broken in this case. Were there any rules broken by the listing broker? Actually, no. No rules are violated by the listing broker at all. The listing broker in some ways is the victim here, okay? The listing broker responded promptly to the potential buyer. They did a great job, and they carried out their uniform duties and probably here their additional agency-related duties to their client. They carried it out well. They did a good job. So were any rules broken by the seller? No, no rules were violated by the seller. In fact, the seller did a really great thing by contacting the listing broker about the communication. So thumbs up for this seller. That was a good job. But then we get to the soliciting broker. Did the soliciting broker break any rules? Probably so. The soliciting broker would most likely be in violation of Commission Rule E13, which deals with sign crossing. So let's see if that's the case. Since this is a real case, what happened? Well, the listing broker filed a complaint with the Division of Real Estate against the soliciting broker, and the Division of Real Estate found that the soliciting broker did violate Commission Rule E13. So there was a public censure, and there was formal discipline, and there was a fine of $2,500, which, by the way, folks, is not covered by errors and omissions insurance. The soliciting broker was also censured for sign crossing in violation of Commission Rule E13. And they also had to do 12 or more hours of commission-approved education, which is over and above the normal CE requirement. Remember, if you have education that is brought upon you because of a disciplinary action, you get no CE credit for that education. Now, the purpose of Commission Rule E13 is twofold. One, it's to help prevent brokers from interfering with an existing listing contract to the detriment of the owner. And two, and very important here, is to protect owners from multiple claims for commissions. And this is all highlighted in Commission Position 3. If you haven't had a chance to look at Commission Position 3, take a look at it. It parallels Commission Rule E13. And E13 says that a licensee is not allowed to negotiate a sale, exchange, lease, or listing agreement with the knowledge of an unexpired exclusive right to buy and sell or lease contract with another licensee. Meaning, if you know that they are still under contract in a listing contract and you want to solicit their business, you can't do that. That's a sign crossing violation. It's okay to negotiate a future sale, exchange, lease, or listing agreement if the initial contact with you was initiated by the owner. But you can't initiate that contact. So you're in the middle of the supermarket. You're going along the aisle there with your shopping cart, and all of a sudden they bump into you with theirs and say, I'm glad I bumped into you. I'm sick and tired of my listing agent. I want to talk to you about listing my property. That is fine. You can talk about entering into a listing agreement after their current listing agreement expires because they initiated the conversation. Flipping that around, if you're going down the aisleway there and you bump into them and say, when are you going to get rid of that no-good broker of yours and list with me? Then you violated Commission Rule E13. That's a sign crossing violation. Now, the burden of inquiry of the status of the listing rests on the licensee. Because, face it, we all know this. Many owners are really dependent on the expertise of their licensee, and they may sincerely believe that an existing listing contract is not in effect when, in fact, it really is still in effect. So the burden of inquiry to verify the status of a listing rests on a licensee. So how do you do that? How do you avoid sign crossing? There's a few suggested approaches. One, always clarify whether or not the seller already has a listing contract with another broker. Just ask them, are you under contract? Do you have a listing with another broker? And if the seller says yes, walk away. You're done. The conversation is over. Okay? If they say no, then you probably need to go one step further and just verify. You don't solicit business from a seller that already has a listing agreement with another broker. And the best way to verify, really, if the seller is saying, I don't have that agreement, is to send an email to the other broker just confirming that that listing agreement has been terminated. It's really as easy as that. You email them, they respond back, I don't have that listing anymore, you're good. If they say, no, I do have that listing, cease and desist, because you might have a potential sign crossing issue. So be careful when it comes to sign crossing. It is easy to step on another broker's toes, but just be careful. Be careful what you say, be careful what you do, and just play smart, good real estate.